So good morning, everybody. You're very welcome to our very first Information Systems Research Seminar. You will see lots of names, brands going on here, and reasons to drive home that this is not just a seminar for one discipline, because our research in information systems is really dependent on contributions from other disciplines like engineering, management, law, psychology, and so on. And the aim of the seminar is really to kind of encourage researchers across all, I suppose, spectrum of their career path to actually excel and to get published in the top journals, 3- 4-star journals, also get high outputs such as the top conferences in the world and so on. And this is very relevant to everybody, not just to PhD candidates doing their PhD, BIS or Lero, but other students who will actually identify with similar issues. Particularly like Trevor's topic today is very relevant to everybody. And as you will see over the next 12 seminars, or the next 2 terms, there will be different issues, okay, where you actually present a problem and you're looking for a solution. So this is very different to the GRC experience, okay, where a PhD candidate comes in, presents their work, and really tries to defend it to supervisors. In contrast, this event is really about putting it out there that you're struggling with a particular topic. And this is not confined to PhD candidates. As a postdoc, I'm experiencing my own challenges. I know experienced academics who have their own challenges in trying to publish in top journals. So you're not alone, and that's what the seminar is really about, to actually open up, get input from other people who have experienced similar problems, but also in return to give back. And by giving back, I mean looking at the readings that we recommend. If there's other papers you think that we've missed, please feel free to send me on papers and we can circulate them. I suppose what's important for the PhD candidates is that you can actually get this as an ECT, 5 credits. So you need to get registered on Blackboard and talk to your supervisors. The module itself will be on Blackboard very shortly. And also we're going to record seminars. So as it stands, we won't be putting the camera on you. We're just going to mount the camera here to record it. Simply because we want people
we might do next time, it depends on whatever.
Yeah. We'll zoom in more there for a moment.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we just want to record seminars and actually have them available for other people from other institutions, for example, like UL already have requested to actually do the recordings and so on. So again, it's a very inclusive experience. Again, as I say, it's the first time we've done this, so if there's areas where we can improve, let us know. We're open to ideas, we're open to changing formats and sequences and so on. I'm sure, Murray, you may want to add a few points yourself.
Well, almost everything I was going to say, you just said, so that's great. I don't need to say very much at the moment. But I suppose, first of all, just as head of BIS, just to say welcome to everybody. There's so many different people in the room from different areas, people that I haven't met before. And this is the first time that we've ever got together as a whole group before. So I think that's valuable in itself, just to talk about research, and that's part of the purpose of it. So, there are a few objectives, and Dennis did mention them. One of them really for us is to raise the bar in terms of high quality contribution. So, the purpose of this seminar series is for kind of internal staff. Okay, so we will have external people here, but the idea is to help develop and nurture and encourage high quality research projects. The second thing really is about networking. We've never all got in the same room together at the same time. And certainly from a discipline point of view, I think that's very valuable for us to bring together everybody, all of the different PhD students, all of the postdocs, all of the friends and families and other animals and so on. So it's great to have everybody in the room. The second thing is really important. We do. This isn't our seminar series. It's not mine. It's not Dennis's. It's everybody. So the quality of it will depend on the participation and preparation. So we do need your feedback. So after the seminar, we will be asking for your feedback on how it went and how you think we can improve it. It's the first time that we've tried to do something like this. So yeah, it's the first time that we've tried to do something like this. So please give us your feedback for future seminars. Next semester is it's not quite a blank slate, but it is pretty much. So do think about using this for yourself as well. So, our first guinea pig is Trevor, and it's great that he's volunteered, and we thank him very much for that. But at the same time, we all reach different points in research where we do need help, and this is a great forum just to say, look, here's what I'm doing, I could do with some help from it. Dennis mentioned the thing about Blackboard, so there will be a module, it will be up pretty soon. The PhD students who do have this as a module do need to chat to their supervisors as to how they get credit for it. Okay, so a learning journal is the catch-all, good pedagogy for whatever you want the student to do. So do a learning journal, I would have thought, reflecting on how each theme corresponds to your own particular research. And then the agenda. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to do. So we're going to ask Trevor to talk about his PhD. He's got to a particular stage where I think it'd be very useful for him to throw out some questions, get some guidance. The topic this week is on theory. What is theory? And there's a debate going on at the moment about is theory king, what is the theoretical contribution? And just from reading about it, it does make you think about not just what is theory, but the whole theory process and how you build a research project. So that's very valuable. So what I'd ask you to do is the open discussion that we'll get from 12:30 or from 11:30 to 12 is really to focus on Trevor and to give him as much feedback as we possibly can, or to focus on Trevor's, I was going to say Trevor's problems, but that's even worse. To focus on what Trevor needs particular help within his research. Okay, so that's the discussion. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll have more of a guided discussion that'll be more focused on the readings. 10 past.
That's great. And just from one last point, there's a mailing list going around. So if you haven't received emails from me about seminars, the calendar of events over the next 2 terms, come up to me afterwards. Give me your email address and I'll add you to that mailing list as well. So on that, we're going to hand you over to Trevor. Thanks, Trevor, for stepping up to the plate.
Hi everyone, my name is Trevor Clohessy. I'm fourth year PhD and I'm a lecturer here in UIG. I remember Dennis back in August was contemplating running these seminars, and I had just got I'd submitted a paper to GIT, and I read the reviewers and read testify, great reviews, let it get in, and then the gatekeeper, the guy who's the EE, said, no, your contribution wasn't specified. So kind of, I was saying to Dennis, yeah, I wouldn't mind coming up here just to kind of coalesce what a contribution is from a theory point of view. My own research is looking at the impact of cloud computing and IT service providers' business models. For the last year, I've been going around Europe kind of soundboarding at various conferences and so on about my research, some very positive, some not so positive. And as a PhD student, you get very attached to your research. And at the start, I got very offended when people are saying, key terms, what's a business model? There's no such thing. This research is no good. But as my mother said, you can't please everybody. So, I find events like these, like you, as a PhD student, you could get into the trap of going, developing yourself around your research and not soundboarding it to anybody. But some of the key moments around my PhD have been actually going to a conference, sitting with coffee and so on, and getting good feedback about it. So this is the title of my PhD. So cloud computing, is everyone familiar with the cloud technology? Yeah. Carr, funnily enough, those familiar with Carr's research, you see he had an article which caused some controversy 10 years ago, said IT doesn't matter. It came out 3 years later saying actually IT doesn't matter and cloud is going to be a significant disruptor. It's already caused a significant shift in the structure of many industries, presenting a serious challenge for companies in terms of their profitability and also their long-term viability. It can destabilize existing markets and may result in the failure of well-established organizations. And many new startup companies, venture capitalists, funding to the hilt on the stock market have gone bust. and it's mainly the result because they haven't been able to commercialize cloud technology. Well, I like this quote from Wyman. He published a nice book, Cloud Economics. He categorized cloud. He said, ultimately, the cloud is the latest example of Shishumtran creative destruction, creating wealth for those who can exploit it effectively, but also leading to the demise of those that don't. So this is the idea, those familiar with the concept of the business model of value creation and capture, that you need to exploit your business model in order to leverage value propositions of cloud technology. Okay, my research is kind of a frenetic approach where I went out and I looked at what was going on in the world in terms of problems and then relating it back to theory. And as you can see here, cloud is causing significant disruption for these guys. We call them the IT dinosaurs who've been around since the 1920s and so on. Even when I was going out talking to these guys, they said they've seen nothing like it. It's destabilizing the traditional way they provide IT. From IBM, SAP, HP, Amazon, they're all encountering. Some companies like Rackspace and so on have booked the trend and are actually commercializing it very well. I was trying to get a model where I could explain my research, and I had a couple of bubbles here. If you talk about those quantitatively, the dependent variables, the business model, this is something that's been around since Shishumter proposed the Shishumter innovation, the 1960s sufficiency model, going to the 70s when you had Drucker, you only needed one customer, to value chain, dynamic capabilities, resource, base view of the firm. This is the business model concept since this new idea how to create and capture value with technology. So this would be the dependent variable. It's always been around. Cloud computing, I think I was going to cite Owen Whelan because he said it last week, but I remember Jeff Walsh said, choose theories which speak to you and not because they are the current fashion. Does anyone know what that means, current fashion?
But I think the IS discipline has been painted with follow fancies, as it's been called.
Yeah. Yeah. So, just to give you an example, cloud was big when I first started out. I just took a screen there from Google Analytics. So this was the cloud. When you enter in the search terms, see the popularity. Now you have big data business models are the big thing. Internet of Things, business models are the big thing. I know very little about that. But cloud seems to be a fad at the moment. So when you're basing your research, make sure that you're known for something like a dependent variable, something that's always been around. Okay? So I don't want to be known for cloud computing, yes, but I'd love to be known for someone, business model and how a new technology would impact that and how companies leverage that. Just in terms of its situation when the IS field, and I'm looking at my unit analysis is the IT service providers. So from a theoretical perspective, when I first started out in 2012, I signed up with Tom's research, 4-month research internship. Himself and HP just wanted to map out the landscape in terms of theory to see what was there, what wasn't there. So there was a few issues in terms of mapping out. There was a dearth of research there, so I was looking at security, privacy legislation, but also this concept of value creation and capture. And John Mooney, Lassity, Wilcox, Winters, these are guys who are mad into their cloud. A big problem in the research is even, I think, Armbrust, which is cited 10,000 times on a pivotal cloud papers, it logically says that cloud can be of value for IT service providers. Very little empirical evidence out there to see what an IT service provider, how cloud has transformed their value capture and creation processes. Very little. And going on Marston, he put the IS researcher at the top up there. The IS researchers are must be proactively involved in every discussion regarding the technology from the outset. Okay, so the theoretical perspective, it was good from the outset. A lot of research angles to be viewed. The pivotal point for me came at a UKIS conference when I presented the value capture and creation paper, research progress paper in 2013 or 2012. And I had two professors, one from Nottingham and Newcastle, that came up to me and they said, yes, value creation and capture would be nice, but this concept of a business model would be very interesting. I came back to Tom and Lorraine, and this is where my PhD progress. So that's the importance of soundboarding. Whatever you think your research in progress at an international level. So just before, I think people mentioned it's very important to have a research objective. At the start, I went through the literature. I didn't want to develop research questions yet. I wanted just a single research objective. And that was, how is cloud computing impacting IT service providers' business models? And I needed that question answered because there was a lot of logical stuff going on in the research. But there was very little of empirical evidence to suggest how cloud has been impacting them. So I had this essential research objective, and my first two phases were getting that research breadth, exploratory, to decipher what's going on out there. So I had a field interviews, and I had focus groups. And they were excellent in pinpointing what actually was going out there in the industry at the time. So I kind of had this, I needed a research lens to kind of focus in what was going out there. And I needed something that was concise and which practitioners could understand. So I came up with a business model which had 4 core key domains: service domain, technological domain, financial domain, and organizational domain. 4 things that you could get across in an interview transcript. So the service domain, it basically explains the value proposition of cloud for the IT service provider and also the consumer. And it also delineates the target customer segment. The technological domain, it delineates the technical functions and architecture needed to realize the service offering, so it's cloud technology. And probably the most interesting domain is this idea how an organization creates value from service offering via the configuration of a value network. Value network is very important within an organization to create and capture value. And finally, all this is no good if they can't actually capture that value. That's the financial domain. It looks at the arrangements, revenues and costs and growth investments decisions operationalized to capture value from the service offering. So this is nice and concise, something I could get across to practitioners. And I could take a snapshot of their current or their business model prior to cloud and the business model now with cloud. But before running off to that, I had to argue that, is everyone familiar with the business model canvas? Osterwalder? Yeah, balanced scorecard, and Avison and Eldebai's V4 ontological business model. So I had to argue that this soft model has all the basic characteristics of these models before I even go out there and have a look at it. So I went out and had a look, and I came up with 3 research questions. So based on the focus group and the field interviews, prior to going into do an in-depth cross-case analysis, I had research question 1, how is cloud computing transforming IT service providers' business models? These have come out of the 2 research phases, significant transformation going on. More importantly, this transformation was more evident in the large organizations. The thing with cloud service providers, anyone can be categorized as a cloud service provider. If I go out and get infrastructure from Microsoft tomorrow and I build my own private cloud, I can categorize as an IT service provider. So it's the guys at the top of the food chain who are providing me a range of cloud service models. And before I get on to this, the benefits one, my second RQ3 question was, yes, they were deriving benefits from cloud technology. However, they were also experiencing salient inhibitors which were preventing them to realize those benefits. And this was a very interesting question. They're operating certain coping mechanisms in order to enable them to realize those benefits. So I had my 3 research questions, my research objective. Before going back out into view this, I went back into the literature. And is anyone familiar with coping mechanisms in the IS literature? There's a thing called coping theory, which is based on Lazarus' psychology stuff. I didn't want to touch that because that was another level. But I came across this framework by Lero and Mindelo, which looked at the impact of the environment on the management of IS information systems management. And basically, they were looking at how dimensions of the environment, information technology, competitors, customers, employees, impacted on IS departments and IS managers. So a company or an IS department had 2 choices. They could interact with the environment So they'd interact with the environment by, let's say, they'd adopt the top technology within the organisation or they'd provision it, or they could actually just not respond at all, just batten down the hatches and hope for the best. So that's something like Blockbuster would have done, or these companies which have gone by the wayside. If they did decide to adopt the technology and go and provide it or adopt it, it would lead to categories of problems. So firms can experience problems due to the changes in IT, such as new paradigms of hardware and software. It was dependent then that the IS managers would have to implement certain coping mechanisms in order to overcome those categories of problems and leverage the benefits. So in reaction to the problems created by technology, firms develop coping mechanisms to attenuate their impact. So it can be reactive or proactive. And based on contingency theory, Lero and Mendelow said there's no optimal ways of coping, that in every organisation there's certain coping mechanisms which can help them leverage new technology. This model has been recently used in an Aegis paper to look at coping with rapid IT change in different national cultures. So it's been adapted to look at cultural use of IT. So going back to the research questions again, so I have my model. Regarding the first RQ, I did a cross-case analysis of two large IT service providers. So they both entered the cloud market in 2010. So you could see here their existing business models. The axis here is showing its time. It's undergoing large-scale, both organization, large-scale transformation, and this is their current, the way they're operationalized, their current overview of their business models. So number one, they had calcified business practices. These were practices that had developed over 20, 30 years. They were standardized, very minimal change going on. They now are undergoing large-scale transformation and restructuring in line with new strategic priorities. So for example, cloud was the big thing for them in 2010. Cloud now has set off new things, catalysts for big data, real-time analytics, Internet of Things. So they have to realign not only cloud priorities, but new practices for these new advancements. Really interesting one, they had proprietary production models, very internal into the R&D department, very little outside influence. Now they're focusing on open source production models. Huge amount of money going into OpenStack, huge. Developing their own proprietary OpenStack kind of deployment models. And the third one, traditional IT operations. So you had a waterfall, agile methods. There's this new thing that there's also investing substantial money, DevOps. Has everyone heard of DevOps? It's basically before, when they developed a product, they would have their big bang release every 4 months. That worked okay with traditional products. Now with cloud computing, large customers now want an update within a day. So rather than the IT department throwing it over to the development team, they've actually eliminated those silos and got the two teams, go back here again, two teams working together now. So you have companies, the development team over in New York, they're brought over to London to work with the ops team, so they can release up to 5 to 6 releases a week. So that's a big thing, DevOps, and they're saying it's a kind of evolution of agile systems. Yeah, this was a big one as well, Ivory Tower service to customer-facing service. Does anyone know what that means? Being up in the Ivory Tower?
It's the arts building.
But basically, they used to develop products, put them on the market, happy days, give customer feedback. Oh crap, now we have to face the customer continuously, daily, hourly. That's a big shift in their business model. This was expected. In their traditional business models, they had predictable financial ranges and growth levels. High margin businesses, we knew what we were going to get. We had our existing customer base. Now we've extended, it's resulting in erratic financial arrangements and growth levels. They're targeting the guy with the hoodie in the bedroom developing the next Farmville app. They want to be known for the guy that they developed that Farmville on. So you can see it's now a lower margin, bigger customer base. And this one was very interesting, physical co-opetition practice to virtual co-opetition practices. Does everyone know what co-opetition means? Competition is, let's say, Microsoft works with an IBM, they're cooperating, but they're also competing. It's funny because the guys now are cooperating on a virtual scale, where the engineers from IBM will not meet with the engineers from Microsoft. They'll have a quick phone call, they'll set up a test environment, and they'll develop stuff in that test environment without ever meeting. Where in traditional model, they bring the guys in for a cup of tea, and they work in there, on board them for 3 to 4 weeks and work on projects. So it's virtual cooperation. So they're getting used. So you can see from research question 1, large-scale transformation from the traditional way they were operating to the new ways. So for research question 2, I'll just bring you back to it. So what were the benefits for IT Service Cloud enabled business models? So the research identified really nice benefits, but it also identified salient inhibitors, which were at the start, when they start providing cloud technology, which were minimizing their ability to actually realize these benefits. So they had to operate in specific coping mechanisms. So this is a general overview. My research goes into much more depth. We have our benefits here. They're across the service domain, technology, so these are the 4 main components of the business model. Really nice benefits. Unfortunately, we also had inhibitors across these domains, minimizing those benefits, and we had our specific coping mechanisms. An example of this would be, one of the benefits was an increased customer base. One of the inhibitors was actually customer engagement, customer retention. Yes, we had large enterprises, some of their customers who they had been their customers for 20 years, they came on board with cloud, the next thing they were going to the rival company. So it's a huge thing, customer engagement. So going back to DevOps, they implement not only DevOps within their company, but they're actually development tools which they get their customers now to also implement. So that means, here guys, we'll train you up how to use DevOps. Now you go away from us and you use DevOps in your own organization. So this is one of the coping mechanisms. I suppose going on to the research impact, I'll start off with the practical impact. Hopefully the lessons learned from my doctoral study will elucidate the impact of a new disruptive technology. As I said before, a lot of logical and anecdotal evidence. It'll also demystify the cloud-enabled business model benefits for IT service providers. I said before, going back to the most cited Armbrust paper, 10,000 sites, a lot of logical, anecdotal evidence. This is actually providing evidence of what the benefits are for IT service providers. And hopefully, maybe further down the line, it will aid with the development of a decision-making tool that will enable IT service providers to identify the most prevalent strategic cloud benefit inhibitors and point towards potential coping mechanisms that can be used to mitigate them. Last year, MISQE had a special issue on cloud, and they did a similar type of thing, but they also had a nice little decision maker tool to help organizations minimize those inhibitors. So that's a potential thing down the line. I suppose this is the one I had a stab at when I'm kind of looking at the theoretical. How am I adding to theory? I hope to contribute in several ways. To add to the cloud computing theory by focusing on the transformative cloud capabilities of cloud computing from an IT service provider. So actually contribute to the cloud computing literature, which is very scarce at the moment, to showing how empirical evidence of how cloud can transform actual business models. Subsequently, the study adds to the business model literature by focusing on how the value creation, configuration, and capture processes have transformed as a result of cloud computing. The study also adds to business model literature by specifically focusing on the concept of coping mechanisms. No research has used that model before to actually focus on how companies are leveraging technology to create and capture value. And hopefully it adds to IS theory in general by answering the call to extend the use of the original research model to explore the relationship between IS and a particular actor within the environment. So just my questions there. Number one, the PhD, how to frame that nicely to get through Aviva, hopefully. But also, just to get into the 3-4 star nightclub would be great. And I was trying to conceptualize what type of music they would have in this nightclub.
What did you come up with? Okay, turn it up.
Cheers, thanks for listening to me for last week.
So I think next, Trevor, like, do you have an idea of possible contributions in your own head?
Yeah.
What you're looking for, insights that you might be missing at the moment?
Yeah, insights, just what people think and so on, yeah.
Yeah. Like you mentioned it after in your presentation about inhibitors. So is this new? Like is this new?
Sorry, I should use the word inhibitor, challenges.
Okay.
You know, organizations when they implement or adapt or try to, they're all going to have any inhibitors. But rarely do you see someone that's coming along and saying how they're coping with this, especially in a cloud computing context.
And your study has actually identified coping mechanisms.
Specific coping mechanisms.
Would they not be strong contributions in themselves? I don't know, I'd like no ideas from people. Like if it's new, like your research is a new approach, and you said it mapped it to the business model.
Yeah.
So your inhibitors contribution, your own coping mechanisms and inhibitors. Probably they're valid contributions.
That's a really a coping mechanism. That's something you can really hang your hat on. That you said it's taken from psychology. Now you're applying to IS and how new technologies changes everything. And here are the coping mechanisms from cloud computing as a result. That's certainly something a very valid contribution. Not only to practice, but you're bringing that back to the theory of coping mechanisms from a different field.
Yeah.
So that kind of hits both. In your discussion chapter in the PhD about contribution to theory, contribution to practice. That's certainly a big one in terms of publications. You had a paper, but this is one of the outcomes. So your contribution is this whole new area. I think that would stand very well to you. So it's certainly something you could hype up a bit more.
Hype up
This whole literature from psychology can apply to IS and the Aegis paper, and now you're taking it a step further. What's different, going back to the Aegis paper, what's different from the original field of psychology?
Yeah.
How does technology change the coping mechanisms?
Yeah.
So that's
a good point, Rob. Thanks.
Can you just go back to the, it's just Andy, just see on the screen, not the picture, but back further maybe to even to the research questions.
This one?
Yeah, or maybe the other one. The next one?
That one.
Yeah, that one there, yeah. I suppose for me, like, just coming at it from more of a positivist kind of perspective, that the thing that's majorly different there, I guess, is the coping mechanisms. And I guess that for me would be, kind of certainly I would be thought as being something that is different. I mean, you said at the start of the presentation that, you don't want to be known for being an expert in hydrogen, and in a sense you're right. And, you mentioned business models, and then there was another literature piece on the environment as well. And I suppose they're one of the bits I would have thought just to go back to and say what specific elements of those did you research in here, and how are they particularly different in the cloud, or because that's ultimately where the theoretical contribution is for me. Especially research question one, where you had two lists of how it was before and how it is now. That's a kind of a data mapping exercise, and it's really useful to see. But I think the real value is in bringing it back to those kind of key theories that you picked out, for sure.
Trevor, just and apologies again for being late, and still feeling I'm okay to ask a question after this presentation. In terms of theoretical contribution, if you took the cloud away from it, I guess a really nice way of thinking about theoretical contribution is, if I was to start a PhD tomorrow morning in this area and I said I'm going to study coping mechanisms in IS, not cloud but IS, what would I do differently, or what would I need to refer to from your study that isn't there already? So is there literature already in IS coping mechanisms, number one?
Yeah.
And number two, are they there but just under a different guise?
Yeah.
So very quickly we talk about, you know, I've seen PhDs where we talk about the barriers to something. Well, there's no research on barriers, but there was on challenges and limitations, which is effectively something similar, if not the same thing.
Yeah.
So could you maybe hang your hat a little bit more narrowly? What would you say to me I want to do differently tomorrow concerning a PhD in this area?
Well, you might have missed it, Kieran. I based the idea of coping mechanisms on this paper from 1990. Later, Mindelo, the impact of the environment on the management of BIS systems and BIS department. And they refer to this concept of coping mechanisms. That organizations, so these are dimensions of the environment: employees, customers, competitors, and technology. And one thing which hasn't been looked at really with this model is the impact of new technology. So a company can either not engage with the technology, so companies like Blockbuster, they just want to look outside, and they might, you know, but companies can then engage with the environment and adopt the technology or provide it. This, unfortunately, can lead to categories of problems, and the IS department will come along and they will implement coping mechanisms. So I've used this model here from 1990 to look at cloud, and as I said at the start, sorry, you probably missed this one, sorry. My research context, the dependent variable business model, because it's been around for the last 70 years, the concept of a business model. I don't really want to be known as the cloud guy because I did a search here. This is the new best fad now, big data business model or Internet of Things business models, and there's the cloud is beginning to evaporate. So I think that answers the question.
Well, I guess it's very close, but again, I know this is started with that best presentation. But if I was to study a PhD now in analytics and coping mechanisms with Cisco that we work with, that decided to embrace analytics, and I decided to use that 1990 paper. What is it that yours adds now that you'll be able to criticise my PhD if I just use the 1990 paper?
Well, hopefully if someone takes my PhD up, they'll be able to, this is not actually the model I use. Tom likes plus and minuses. He likes plus and minuses in the real model. But let's say big data business models, I showed you a graph there. They could have said, well, this is the way this guy went around looking at the business model, this is the research he used, and this is the model used in terms of coping mechanisms. So you could look at the coping mechanisms for big data business models.
Okay, but I guess, I'm sorry, I will leave it there to have this presentation, but I think your PhD will have to do a bit more, like, just if I'm being critical now, I'm interpreting and exaggerating, and I'm holding my hand up that I am. But if your PhD was just an illustration of the 1990 framework in a new technology like cloud, that illustration is nice and actually quite valuable. And it's somewhat of a contribution. But if you said, well, actually, no, the 1990 paper is out of date, because when you look at new technology like I did, there are 3 new things now that weren't in the 1990 paper that you need to do. If yours was just an application of the 1990 model, and I'm doing my analytics, but I read your one because it's a nice illustration of how to do it, that's probably shorter than where you'd like to be. But if you can hang your hat and say, well, actually, no, there's 3 or 4 different coping mechanisms or tailoring of the coping mechanisms in the 1990 paper that we had to make, or the business model's a bit different, whatever. As long as there's differences that you can point to that come out of the PhD, then it's okay. And maybe you just don't.
No, that's great feedback. As I said before, whatever book in the PhD to aim a bit further afield in 3- and 4-star publications would be great. I'll definitely take that on board.
And for the 3- and 4-star, moving well away from the illustrative bit to what are the 4 or 5 different things and real teeth behind them, real evidence behind them, and power of how I can take them. These particular events applied in new domains would be. That's great.
Thanks, Trevor.
You know, Kieran's point, Trevor, you know, even in your discussion chapter, we had an image of what the old model looked like, or the old coping mechanisms. And then the very next page or below, you have a new model, which, like Kieran was saying, if there's maybe 2 or 3 new things, or maybe there's something in the old model that's not relevant anymore. Someone can see visually and blink of an eye and say, oh yeah, see now the difference. And then you want to explain that here's your contribution, here are the 3 or 4 new things that's different that I found.
Also, just taking the 1990 model and sees what's not relevant anymore.
Superimposing your one on top of it, your diagram or adaptive model, that'd be fantastic.
But the key thing with that would be, within the way that you collect the data, that you have a justifiable way of saying, I'm proposing theoretically that this part's different, and here's the evidence to say that it is different, and that kind of is justifiable in terms of the evidence.
Another point, sure. You made reference to that you didn't want to become known as the cloud guy or whatever it is, right? But I think that could be clouding your own judgment as well. Right? You could do that, right? Because your objective, your question is, where the class focusing on the cloud, you need to be true to that, fulfill the objective of research or have. Your personal branding is separate. But like, if you don't know cloud, don't be looking at cloud. So this is something to be aware of.
Start again.
Yeah.
I'll go back to
It's very important, yeah. Like we know technology is going to go and clouds, when it's like clouds here, we know technology. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you answer the questions and find the contributions from that. You want to say, well, that's a great contribution, but I want to know as a cloud guy.
Okay. Just one observation there. The graphs on Google Insights, I think are wrong. I'll tell you what, they're right, but you're actually, what's happened is Google Insights for trends uses a calculation based over a root number over a period of time.
Yeah.
So where your one, it shows cloud is kind of going down over time, and it shows big data and those is going up. If you look at the actual volume counts as of today, cloud computing is presently double the keyword search activity of big data, and it's over treble the Internet of Things. So in terms of overall popularity, cloud is still violently higher than both of those other two areas.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, but I'm just going on words.
And the trend
That is enough for my research, talking to people. They don't hear about cloud anymore. They don't hear about big data. This is, it's top cloud provider. So I'm just kind of make that point. But I definitely agree with you.
You use that to your advantage as well, Trevor. Like when you're presenting there, it's kind of thinking like a journal like Harvard Business Review or IEEE or Sloan, they'd love something like this. That if you could think this, if you could come out with digital practitioners, what are the 4 or 5 key things that companies need to do to cope with new technology? And they think that stuff up. So they get back to disruptive innovation and that, and you can work with somebody else who's looking at another technology or.
So put the hat on the new technology and then refer back to the cloud.
Yeah, but technology is totally changing business models. Here's research we did looking at cloud. Here's how you cope with a new technology. Or maybe you could find someone else to partner up with who can look at cloud or different technology, or if you come up with 4 or 5 key learnings for CIO or whatever. That's the kind of stuff they love. That's your practical contribution. If you think that.
It was actually a question I was asked in my own by the value of open source business model. So I knew I was looking at you were a big guy to do open source. But the external examiner said to me, open source aside, and looking at the business model, like, is it applicable to anything else? Could you apply it to proprietary software? If you were to go in and talk to a practitioner, how would you apply it? So, and I was kind of put on the spot a little bit because I don't talk about open source, so you have to kind of think outside the box a little bit.
And something hopefully for the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, just something I don't quite understand. Yeah, that's the promotion of cloud to a business model. Surely it's the IT service provider business model, and it's operationalized to a cloud infrastructure. So I don't understand this idea that there's a specific cloud business model, especially when you're saying you don't want to be necessarily known as the cloud guy. So what happens to the business model when the cloud disappears?
It's funny, British Academy managers told me that our conference I was at last year, and that's a very good question. That's why I had part Q1, the transformation that has occurred.
Yeah, but if you go back to our Q1, on their slides, I would argue that most of the things that were there are just operational features. They're not a business model.
But
So the next one. Yeah. So you mentioned sitting in an ivory tower. But that's not a business model. That's not. Where's the revenue? Where's the?
Well, I think I haven't put the headings under there, but listed under characteristics of the service domain. If you go back here, I actually haven't put them there, but they're within categorized as the service domain, technological domain, financial domain, and organizational domain. The main transformations that were occurred using that lens. So I know it doesn't say there the headings because it title space, but they're actually embedded within those 4 things in the business model quadrants. I have to trust you on that one. You can read the PhD. I just trust that.
Sorry, Trevor, it's a related point, I guess, to tease that one out. I mean, if I think about cloud technology, we take me something often basic like Dropbox. So, like, we're applying for funding and we're publishing and we're doing all these industry presentations and all this stuff, and there's so much hassle and good things and bad things on a day-to-day basis of a research group. And things will go really well, or they may go okay, or they might go well at all. The fact that we suddenly decided to move to storing all of our documents and all of our stuff on Dropbox may have an impact on how we communicate as a group or something. But how did you separate when someone came back to you and said, yeah, this is a fantastic, this contributes to the business model, or this is a change? How did you delineate between what was just a company that was doing good stuff and running their company very well and doing good initiatives and doing good things, versus the cloud enabling component of it that allowed it to happen?
And just at the start of the lecture, I said, of the presentation, I said, there's a big confusion what an IT service provider is. Dropbox, I don't know if you know this, they rent their infrastructure from Amazon. So if Amazon go down tomorrow, Dropbox is gone. So Dropbox are an intermediary service provider, but they're not the true one of the sense of an IT service provider.
Okay, well, we'll then take Amazon then, or
Amazon,
an example.
What's the question again?
In the cases that you studied, how do you delineate when you said, well, there's evidence here to show there's revenue or there's profit or there's whatever, there's a change in the business model here. How did you delineate it when you were interviewing people between the money they made or the revenue they created or the cost of whatever as a result of how they managed and worked on a day-to-day basis versus the cloud enabling bit? So, for example, I could have, whatever example you want to use, but our group could use a certain cloud technology, and things go incredibly well despite it actually being a barrier, being poor and disruptive. Or we could actually go really badly, even though the cloud bit was fantastic. We just didn't work well as a group. We didn't do the stuff we didn't work harder. I'm just wondering, how do you separate the two? When someone gives you a piece of evidence and says, yeah, cloud was brilliant because our company in the last year since we adopted cloud has been a fantastic success. How do you delineate between good work that they did and the cloud bit?
Well, as regards, if they said the cloud was giving us operation costs, I have to back up that with secondary and tertiary evidence. I wasn't given access to financials, I had to base it on their words and, secondary. As I said before, these 2 large ones I did look at, very used to high margin businesses, very select customers. Now we're going to the lower margin businesses with a wider customer base. So I think a good analogy was before we sold the whole painting, got the big 5,000 or 100 million or 100,000 contract over 5 years. Now we have to sell the pixels of that picture. And to be honest with you, it's very surprising. Some of these companies have invested like millions into it. And when you ask them, are you seeing the payoffs? No, not really yet. I don't know if that answers your question in terms of what's different about cloud, but
one suggestion I'd have, maybe, again, if this was a more positive study, you could construct it in a way that would say, look, over the last 5 years across these 100 or 1,000 companies, 11% of their turnover or of their margin or whatever it is, we can attribute to the cloud enabling component. Now, and again, you can question that figure, sure, but look, that's what a positive study might show. Now, I don't think with the qualitative study you can accurately or convincingly say 11% of the revenue was attributable. But the closer you can get to some comment and evidence that gets there, because at the moment someone might be able to come in, an examiner, or again, definitely a 3 or 4 star editor, will come in and say, this is a case study of a fantastic company that happened to be using cloud. But I'm not convinced that the cloud bit is the one that's made the difference, and there isn't enough of a parsing of the two.
Which I totally agree with you, that this, having actually physical evidence or of that actual attribution to cloud, but it's tough enough getting them to interview, but when I started mentioning financials, I got off and jumping. So, you're not going to be talking to anyone else about a revenue model, or, you know that, like, I don't understand what you're saying here, because that would definitely be a force there if you could get your hands on that.
But that's the key part, that I think we're saying overall, that is where, the real kind of value of the contribution is. If you can take the environmental model from, 1990 and say, here it is in the cloud, you need to be able to, justifiably say, this is the extra theoretical bit that I want to add on to it. But they'll only accept that if they feel that you have evidence to say that piece of data backs it up. And unless you have the bit of data to justify it and map it up, then you can't make the theoretical claim.
And how do you engage that relationship? Or do I have to go into IBM and say, partner up with that?
Well, I suppose it's all part of the theorizing process. So, at the very start of the process, you say, well, here's the environmental model with all the different constructs.
Yeah.
And, I know that, here's the cloud environment, here's what's different. And certainly, in a positivist way, perhaps, then you might postulate that these constructs are different, and this is what I want to add on to that theory, so that it's able to capture something that's different in this new environment. You then go and collect data about the whole model, including whatever is new, and then you prove after the data has been collected that if it's done rigorously, then those new constructs do actually exist, and they add something new to the model and they change it in some way.
Okay, right. That would be a quantitative one, right?
Well, certainly for me, and the way kind of my brain works, that would be that kind of process where you'd identify a particular model. You have an idea of how to develop it a priori, and you collect data to try and justify that extension of it. Positively, I'm open to other people kind of pushing in as to how you can validate that. But certainly the data will tell you, or will help identify what the characteristics are that you think are different.
Okay, that's great.
You mentioned this small canvas.
Yeah.
Did you actually use that in the study?
Just online components of it, I choose that. I need something that I could use concise and four sectors. That way. But I have to, as I said, I have that table up there to prove that it contains constituents of these top site ones.
I really enjoyed the talk. I know nothing about cloud, and I found it really interesting. I know nothing about business either.
Fantastic question.
With the rate of change and such, how do companies decide on what operational change to make? As in, what reflection process do they use regarding their strategy going forward?
It was market.
Say, back in the 90s.
It was market and competitor led. Both companies I went into, which is unfounded, was something we got to do it. And then within a year, it's in their strategic mandates. So
they just watch what other people do.
Watch the market. It's becoming consumerization and commoditized market. People want services that can pay, like a water bill, but that's the one. Now we need to use, but that type of market, and it's the blockbuster moment. Do we compete with Netflix, or we just close the doors? Netflix is not going to go anywhere. Do you know that kind of ethos? So I think I hope I answered that.
Murray's finding we've done qualitative stuff, Trevor.
Yeah.
So you can certainly, you were submitting a paper, but you were saying that this scoping model is changing because of cloud. But I read your discussion first, and okay, that's interesting. Now I'm going to go back and look at your methodology. How rigorous was it in terms of the coding? Who did you interview? Did these guys have experience of models before cloud came along? You're saying that this new factor or this new construct doesn't matter anymore. Where's the code? The exemplar code is going to back it up. Or, you're the you have to interpret the evidence. And, you've done many interviews. Many guys actually said this construct is not relevant anymore.
So you've been talking about the rigorousness, just to make sure that's honed in on one.
That's what most editors will be looking for. That you're coming up with claims, your model is extending the old one. Now I'm going to look for flaws. I'm going to try and prove you wrong. You have to have this very solid and say bang, bang, bang.
Of course, yeah. But don't worry, the evidence is there. I actually did it.
Oh, yeah. Show that, if you have
There's a rigor there.
rigor rigor is there and you can show, well, this construct or this part of the old model is not relevant anymore. Well, why? Who said it? Where's the code? How do you know this?
And actually, Owen's right there. I mean, one of the key things I'd say with the top journal especially is you assume the reviewer is the enemy. They don't like the stuff. They don't like cloud. They don't like this. They think it's been done before and so on. So this thing about Owen mentioned about proving them wrong. It's not even enough, I think, to be able just to say, well, yeah, there's evidence here that cloud contributed because X amount of money was made or because this enabled faster time to market or whatever. But actually, the reviewer is going to kind of go, well, I think actually, no, this cloud contribution here, this money or the revenue occurred for other reasons as well. So we'll say X, Y, and Z. You actually, a great paper will go back and go, look, you might say, well, look, the cloud, this revenue here is because of other reasons such as X, Y, and Z, but actually it's not X because, and here's a quote, or evidence. Yeah. It's not Y because of quote and evidence, and it's not Z because of quote and evidence. So you box it off. In fact, you qualitative research, there's more onus on it than I think there is with quants. It's awfully easy to find an example from some numpty in a company that will say they love this technology, it's the best thing ever. You have to show the evidence and the caliber of the person, firstly, but then all the reasons why the other excuses or the limitations aren't limitations. And this is actually a valid quote and it stands up. It's not through any other reason this money was generated. And that's something I think in the top terms that people forget sometimes.
Sorry, does that go back at a level before you even start to make a contribution to actually, when you're collecting the data, you know, the actual push through this, when you get something that's brilliant, I really want that. Now zero in on it and actually say, show me the evidence kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then
sometimes the project research, you're the skeptical person. You have to pretend you're the reviewer. You're not just an interviewer to record what they say, but you're actually going to interrogate it and try and dispute it and to cynically and constructively.
And another point, Trevor, on the last slide there, about contributions, we said you were making a contribution to minus theory by answering to the call. Now, I don't know input on this point, but I don't think someone puts somebody's call is actually contribution to knowledge because that gap can only be interviewed. So just because Joe Brown says something doesn't mean it's true or relevant. So there's just because he or she said it, I will be pending my PhD off that. Okay, that's really, as mentioned,
Trevor, one of the things that, Trevor, the question to say about the title of this seminar, that I was interested in, this isn't really a question necessarily for you, but I thought it was kind of what you were driving at, was this distinction maybe between contribution to theory and contribution to practice. Yeah. And what I'd be particularly interested in hearing what people have to say is, within a PhD, is there some sort of conventional wisdom as to the balance between what is required in terms of whether a PhD needs to contribute more to practice or to theory? If you know the question that I'm asking. Because I think that's a fundamental question.
Just very briefly, I noticed recently, particularly external PhDs as well, is this almost bland action by everybody to make sure that they have contributions methodologically to theory and to practice, and it's always the same thing between all the time. And sometimes people find it easy to box them and to determine that this is a contribution to methodology, how you did it basically, and how you extended the method, and how you triangulated, how you approach, and how it fitted into the context of your study. It's usually one that you have well down the path, and you've done it this way because it was an essential way to do it. Contributions to theory can be very fluffy sometimes. Very nondescript, waffly language that you see in some PhDs. And the contribution to practice is usually, well, what is the impact? How does the practitioner do with this? And that's usually one that's a bit somewhat solid as well. So, in my experience anyway, the contribution to theory is the one that is prone to be more waffly. But is there a balance? Well, I just have to say, over the last few years anyways, that all three are there. Sometimes some sections are bigger than others. So it's a particularly applied dissertation, particularly some of the stuff you look at would be more pure science and have an artifact or something creative. There would be a big piece of it, and we're trying to do that. You know?
But it's a good question because I was the opposite. I found the contribution to practice a lot more difficult because my PhD was in theorizing. So some PhDs are primarily on building theory or theorizing something. So it's very, very easy. Well, not easy, but it's simple to come up with, you know, a contribution because you are making contribution theory by building theory and analyzing about something. It's a lot more difficult then. But I found a lot more difficult to talk about the implications for the contribution to practice. You know?
Just on those 2 points, Sean, as well. One thing I noticed was that sometimes people blend them all together, and experts have come back saying actually separate them up. Say this is the clear section of the contribution to practice theory and the methods.
That's why I asked.
Yeah. So keep it very clear. That would be my recommendation anyway. At this time, you're unsure of yourself, so you just put it all into this mixed bag. So, or if you separate it out, and maybe balance it out with maybe 2 contributions to each or 1 to each. It depends on the supervisor's input to
But I
it.
think, particularly on the lens point, I think if the goal to your PhD is more about theoretical movement and moving of the knowledge in the theoretical sense, extending theory, your contribution section should mirror that and should therefore be beating in that piece.
Yeah.
If it's more applied, you may have more to say on the other side. So it really depends on what.
What prompted me to ask that question was that given this conversation, I would tell them about something here that is contributing more to theory or to practice.
Like Trevor talked about.
Sorry, yeah. That's right.
I might hope to do the seesaw effect balance it out. I'm not going to say revolutionise the wheel because I don't want to be taken to task and be that so. Yeah, you know, so that's why I kind of soundboarded here. So I have an idea in my mind. I have to discuss it with Tom and Lorraine and they see what they think. So
I think it very much depends on what the target is and what the individual wants to get out of it. You know, if it's more of a practitioner or if your career path is more practice and research, then you put more effort into that. But you know, certainly if you're looking for say publication in the top journals, they don't really care what the implications for practice are. You know, like you'll have a section on it, but it's not something that's going to make it accepted or rejected. You know, it'll be something at the end that you'll maybe need to beef up and add, you know, give a bit more thought to, but it's not really the key thing. And even for the Bible, I'm not sure, certainly when you start the Bible, certainly when I started my Bible, the implications for practice were not in my head at all. You know, I had certain very relevant implications for practice, but like, did they matter? I don't think I was even asked about them, to be honest.
I know time is pushing on, so does anyone have a further question of Trevor? No? Okay. So we're going to take a break now for the next 10 minutes. There's teas, coffees outside, and then we'll come back for the live discussions and some takeaways for Trevor as well in the last 15 minutes. So, So we're going to kickstart again anyway. I'm going to see what we might wait for them. There's about 30 minutes remaining. So ideally what we'd like to do is have a discussion on the 3 papers we circulated. I know some people are not in any, so they might feel out a little bit, but feel free to jump in the discussion. I think in the last 10, 15 minutes we really want to come up with a few more takeaways for Trevor. So what he leaves there's 4 or 5 points that will actually help him to develop his contributions a bit more. So those of you who actually did get the papers during the week, I suppose the 3 questions are really coming up here. The first one is really, I'd like to see who actually agrees or disagrees with the authors here. So if you pick the most recent paper, which is quite relevant, by Lex and Malloran in 2014, as you know, as part of a series of discussions, do you actually agree with the authors about Lex theory? Or do you disagree? So if you can give a show of hands, actually, who agrees or disagrees with them? It's like in the first year. The blank faces.
So the question is, was you actually read it?
I'm sure you did, Tom. Lead by example. I didn't. I won't read my update last night reading them as well. And this is very honest. Okay. So essentially, okay, there's 2 papers that went out. Okay. I think my own view is that they're still very linked. Okay. Like the Whitaker paper goes back to 1989. It's actually like 26 years on. 26 years on, they still make reference very much to the Avison paper makes a lot of reference to the Whitaker paper. So it still carries a lot of weight, I think that's my own personal view. So going back to Tom's first question, who actually has read it? Are you familiar with these papers? So, okay, so there's two people who actually read it, but people actually, those I expected are just maybe shy people. So I suppose first of all, looking at Evison's paper, we talk about this idea that some papers, and it touches on what you were saying earlier, Laurie, about your thesis about this idea of applicative knowledge, that, okay, it doesn't carry the weight of a big blown theory, okay, but it's still, as they said here, it's different, but it's equal to the value of theory. So some of the research you drive actually may not actually have a full-blown theory to back it up, but what you pull out of your research will actually contribute. And the reviewers actually, they're thinking that their argument, I think, is that reviewers need to soften the line of what's the contribution to theory, because contribution can take other forms. Now, that's my take on it, but I welcome your own views. And also raise the question, this is the view of two people, and a few more who've joined in the debate. So what do we do next? What's the impact for the BIS discipline? Do we throw the baby out with the bathwater here and take the risk of, well, we rewrite our papers to actually suit these guys, and we may not actually get into 3-4 star papers. So it's a tough one to call. So where do we go from here? And most of all, what are the implications for Trevor's PhD? Is there a link here? Like when you talk about, for example, from the editors of the Academy of Management Journals, okay, they ask again, is the paper interesting? If you're submitting to the paper, is it valuable to practitioners and researchers? So there has to be some relevance there. That's their argument. What new insights come from it? What new practices are derived from your research? Is it specific to a particular perspective? So if you're taking a business model lens, what are you pulling out that's new? And also for the rareness, okay, so that your contributions are moving away from this common sense approach to what everybody knows to something that's novel and unique. So maybe there's some of the challenges you have, Trevor, and everyone else who's doing not just a PhD, but actually submitting to the top journals. I know some of you have that experience. So if you have any comments on this, maybe.
Just comment on my own PhD back in the words of black and white. But it drew from consumer behavior theory, which ordinarily one would probably align more with marketing than IS. And it also drew from decision theory, which had a huge overlap in psychology. And this really was quite obvious early on that the informing disciplines into IS would be heavily informed. So, you have to be, I was very conscious during my PhD that I will never know as much as a psychologist about particular nuggets at the root of the theory I was using, and I will never know as much as the marketing expert about the other side. Yes, I had to try and blend the two and show how they can be blended, and there was some value, how they can work together. And taking sort of an IS view of the world as to how to apply them in our territory. So the informing discipline piece will always put you at a apparent disadvantage, but not necessarily. And it's just a comment, really.
Right, so a few heads agreeing with you there as well, and Neil.
Yeah, I think part of what they talk about in the paper as well is, or one of the other papers is the challenge that IS has, because they talk about economics and physics as having grand theories that you can easily use to build on, but information systems doesn't, typically. And so they are that discipline that needs to generally borrow and import theories from other disciplines. And certainly, I know from my own PhD and students that I have at the moment that that's always a huge challenge for them is what theories are there? What theories can I use in information systems to study something, and so there's a challenge of, where do I look for theories and where do I get them from? And there's a useful reference at the end, because I did read them, and I highlighted the question as well. but there is a useful reference there I'll maybe just stick it up on Blackboard of a link to an AIS website that has 60 or 70 different IIS theories. I didn't know that we actually had 60 or 70 different IIS theories. I was very surprised. I might go back and do my PhD again. But yeah, no, it's always that challenge for the researcher, whoever it is, as to what theory to use, what blend of theories, and where they come from. And there's a debate whether that's a weakness or whether it's a strength. Because certainly, someone like Bob Galliers, for example, would argue that that's a huge strength of the discipline. That we can be at that point where you blend lots of different theories, and then there's potentially then lots of different contributions to make.
I suppose there's one challenge out of the discussion between Shirley Gregor's response in particular to the absent paper, and also back to her 2006 paper on theory, the MISQ paper. The idea that in some way that something else can be substituted for theory, or the idea that we have these other things that are coming out there that in some way are going to trade off, and she speaks of this explicit danger. And she's saying that there is a great way of reflecting new and novel articles that come out in information systems, and that can be reflected in a single article, and that is theory. And she's saying that whatever they're saying their paper shouldn't, or the danger is that this will be reflected now as an attack on theory, or that in some way that we can offer out substitutes for it.
I'd agree with you there as well, Owen. So people could use this as an excuse to say, oh look, that it doesn't have to be heavy in theory no more, it's actually just quite light.
Yeah.
But then what's the difference between you and a consultant, which comes through the papers as well?
I suppose just one other point, and something I meant to say, I was saying to Trevor over the lunch break, and I said to Lorraine earlier, it was a discussion I had previously with Gordon Goku and he asked me about my PhD. So what are you doing? Well, I'm looking at crowdsourcing. And he said, oh, well, that's what you just collaborated. We've been doing this for the last 30 years. With plenty of theory there, with loads of frameworks. So it's the same thing really, isn't it? And I said, well, hold on now a minute. I said, crowdsourcing has ubiquity, it has anonymity as a component, as always. He said, well, that's very interesting. He said, you give me a list of things there. And he said, if you're doing a framework or a model, he said, and you want something unique, then that framework has to speak explicitly to those differences. He said, I would suspect that if you have a contribution to theory, that in that bubble, that's going to be the exciting bit. And I said, he said, doesn't mean that, well, we were saying it doesn't mean that other parts of the framework don't come from existing tried and trusted models and things that have been there for 30 or 40 years. But if you have this new addition, it's speaking to those unique factors that make your area of research different. I suppose that's a challenge. That's, for me anyway, I'm sure it is. That's really, really hard. Like, theory it's hard to show that, to find a contribution, and then to show the contribution as to how you do it. But I wouldn't like to be trying to substitute off saying, well, this isn't theory, but this is good as, and it's a list of, or,
But when he makes that explicit in his paper, he said, PhDs you think they need to come up with a new theory. He said theoretical contribution is a modification or to the existing theory, or any change you might make. So his paper I found very, very useful when I was doing my PhD.
Yeah.
It was very good about something weapon.
Yeah, I'd circulate them out too. Yeah.
Yeah. The paper is Sutton and Stoll.
Yeah.
Stoll, what theory is and what theory is not, or something like that. It's a very, very useful paper as well. And she's back in she's got some really good stuff.
Yeah. And Hefter as well does a great paper on the knowledge base. So we're making contributions to the knowledge base rather than just a piece of theory.
Yeah.
Go on, Anthony.
Perhaps it's the age of IS as a discipline that all the time people are trying to think that we must reinforce, we must ensure that it doesn't in any way become less than it is, get dumbed down in any way. That constant reinforcement is there. Maybe the area of experimentation and trying really new and innovative ways of looking at things is that dampened down a little bit because the rigor must be there and it must be true to itself. And, it's being a little cautious because it's young, and then maybe in time it'll be more open to, there'll be stages along the way of getting to somewhere. But there's so many influences anyway.
We did an exercise recently, myself, Trevor, Colin and Kieran, we're looking at template papers for publications, and one of the things we found was each journal has its own particular style. And if you don't fit that category, well, then you probably won't get accepted anyway. So it's very conservative, and maybe, like you were saying, maybe it's too straitjacket.
Maybe there's an area for a different publication entirely that would look at newer, evolving, and then it would make its way back into the main volume.
Actually, the communication for the IIS is a good journal. That is, at least it claims to be. I think it is actually, sorry, it sounds like I don't think it is. It's one that allows papers that are that bit different. They can be a lot longer depending on the context. The methodology doesn't have to conform and so on. So it's for new and groundbreaking stuff, which is, it's good. But I think there's probably room for more tracks, or conferences around what you're talking about. CAS is a high bar to start off with. If you're a PhD student and you have a groundbreaking idea, it's a long way from starting a PhD idea to publishing in CIS.
So I suppose moving forward, just putting the focus back onto Trevor, what does he take out of this session really? Based on the discussions we had before the break, and also based on insights from these papers. So I suppose one of the things that came through these papers from each other was that you said it's not just about articulating your contributions, it's about being able to defend them as well. So if you can really bond that, so no matter what way somebody comes at you, you're still saying, this is a contribution and this is bonded. You're confident to do that. Yeah.
One thing I think as well is the problems for the latest of units, but no doubt was raised before again. No doubt was the notion of what's really what. Done chasing this same issue with cloud. There is a model that's impacting the cloud impact the business model. No, that's the first thing that it's the obvious thing. But this is the first time, it's still something you grapple with, but it will pop up anyway. But it's not the first time that a new technology is viewed as, is it really new? And it's the same question. Is it just an extension of what we had before, with a new name? And therefore, if it is just that, then the existing theories are perfectly valid. It isn't just that. So you can take a very sort of mathematical type of, to break down that sort of an issue, which is sort of have a defense for it. You need it right now.
I'm conscious that we have a few people from industry here working full-time doing PhDs, and there's other people who are actually full-time now academics. But what's your view on all of this?
Dennis, I read the first paper there.
Yeah.
I'm actually in the second year of my PhD, and my chosen area is big data and mobile commerce. Okay, and I actually think that IS is a little bit on caught on the hop at the moment, because I'm finding it hard to relate some of the theories from, say, guys like Weber, who wrote about theory back in 1990 and before 1980, and now relate that to innovations that are happening right now. And if you look at the class here today, most people are doing PhDs on big data, social media, analytics, etc., all the latest kind of innovations. And I think, just if you wouldn't mind if I just read 2 paragraphs. This is a book that I've been reading, where this guy is saying that it is now possible, his title here is The End of Theory. Okay, I think there is now a growing, if you're in the chat about that side, there is a growing resonance within not just the IS community, but from business as well. This is feeding back into IS. And maybe now we should be looking at other ways to think, rather than using age-old theories that seem to have lost a little bit of resonance. I know we got here because we followed those theories and we expanded them and grew them, but maybe there's some change in the air. I just read just 2 paragraphs, which certainly meant something to me when I read them and really made me sit up and think. It says that the title of the paragraph is The End of Theory, okay, question mark. Big data transforms how we understand and explore the world. In the age of small data, we were driven by hypothesis and theory about how the world worked, which we then attempted to validate by collecting and analysing data. In the future, our understanding will be driven more by the abundance of data rather than by the hypothesis and theory. These hypotheses have often been derived from theories of the natural or the social sciences, which in turn help explain or predict the world around us. as we transition from a hypothesis-driven world to a data-driven world, we may be tempted to think that we also no longer need these theories. And that kind of hit home with me, that maybe we need to look at the other side of the coin, so to speak. So we have theory, but also in the world that we live in today, data has just become so important, every aspect of it. And I think that's something that maybe Trevor could take, into his thinking, maybe again, another way of looking at what he's trying to achieve, as a thing from trying to validate it all, looking at age-old theories and expanding them.
What's the name of that book?
It's called Big Data, A Revolution That Will Transform How We Live, Work and Think, by Victor Mayer, Schronenberger, and Kenneth. I'm happy to send a copy out to everybody. I mean, as in a photograph. I just think it's an interesting thing that we look at. We're all researchers. We all want to rigor and validate what we do. If we're going to do that, we need to look at both sides of the coin. So yes, theory is very important, but is it losing some of its relevance? I feel there's been a huge contextual shift in the last 5 years, and IS, I think it's at a crossroads, and I think we're very fortunate to be around researching at this time, because there's so many things we can now contribute to that change that's happening at the heart of it.
I just want to add one thing, sorry. I'll be brief. Jed came into my office last week, or maybe the week before.
We had a row, okay,
and he just read that book and he was all excited about it. And he said to me, very similarly, because, just to step back, often the thing with, the academic world and the practitioner world, there's theory on the academic side, and then there's practice on the practitioner side. And there's a spectrum there, and it's always the challenge is, where are you on that spectrum? So Ed came into my office, and I've been trying to get him to read these theory papers and stuff, and get him into theory and so on. And he came into my office with his book and said, I don't need theory anymore because I've got big data. And I was just like, oh Jesus. I thought, this is just Jed. It'll take time, and
he's in the room.
Then I read this paper by Lynn Marcus, in the papers that I recommended, right? And at the end of it, she was going on about how most of these papers are about qualitative research, and she mentioned quantitative research, and she said that theory light papers are already being published with theory light. And she referenced the book that Jed has just been talking about, and a bunch of other books as well. Basically with the idea that this argument that theory, is becoming less and less relevant to academics to endeavour. This guy Ventnor that someone mentioned earlier on does this high-speed sequencing. So he's sequenced the whole ocean, he's sequenced the air, he's found all these new species and so on. So the volume of data and this idea of algorithms allows you to discover patterns that weren't there before. And that little blip where you see something that wasn't there before, that is there, right there is the new knowledge. So we don't need theories, we don't need models.
But is that not theory?
So that's the question. So that's the question. Do we need theory? Is theory relevant?
It's not theory. But surely I look at it, and even like what you're saying about big data, you can build theory from data. From
but surely you have to analyze it through some kind of lens to know whether it's a literal blip, or is there something behind it? What's the context surrounding the blip that causes it?
Three points for this really quickly. One is that standing on the shoulders of giants, the notion that we complete our PhDs, we do this sort of stuff by building on the work that's done before us, means that if you're not going to do that, you basically have a much tougher setup in terms of application of PhD. I mean, orders of magnitude. That's the first thing. The second thing is that for anybody that I've had involved with in terms of supervisory capacity anyway, from industry, who has basically wanted to discard the theory, just straight into the, oh no, this is the problem, because it's either every one of them is failed.
I was just going to say, Jed, like Jed, I'm part-time and from industry. And Jed, you send me a photo of that book I'll send you photos. I know what I want. I read some of the books about what theory is, and I found it really useful because in industry and in general, the layman, we talk about practice and theory is describing something. But actually, the papers that I got a few from Kieran, and they were really going back to, well, theory is not, so what we're talking about here, maybe a few different ideas of what theory actually is.
Yeah.
And the resounding point that I got out of it, that was enlightening to me, was that theory is the what. You know, as opposed to the what or the it's here or look at this trend, it's the why. And it took me a long time to get my head around that, being from industry, being, well, theory is describing something, or theory is describing theories, or this theory. So I think it's, for me, it was very useful as just an important building block. Like, no more than if you're trying to research strategy, what's strategy, or what's the cloud, or what's.
And I think, you know, one of the papers is by Lee, and he starts off by asking the question, what is theory? Like, what do we mean by theory? And I think certainly for some, and even for me, I was thinking, well, if someone actually asked me, you know, define what theory is, it's different for different people. And certainly in the Everson paper they talk about, they have an exemplar of what they mean by theory, right? And two of the different respondents in the series of 6 papers find different things that they thought were theory in the paper, but they weren't the same. So it's very much about your perceptions about what you actually think theory is in the first place.
I think one of the core things, and probably is this debate, is the maturity of the discipline. And again, there was a lot of excitement of that for a while, that we're in a mature discipline, but we're now, whatever it is, 40, 50 years old. And we're still using that excuse. I think the use of theory and our discussions about theory and all those are very mature compared to other disciplines. So to give, and I think it's clouding that when we say, well, is theory good or not, we're thinking of the papers we're reading. And I would say as a whole, other disciplines looking at us would be very critical. So for example, if we take any of the areas we're looking at, analytics, agility, lean, crowdsourcing, there's already a flood of frameworks out there on each of those. I would say at least a dozen on each of those, but probably an awful lot more than some of the older ones like Agile. In science, you wouldn't have 25 frameworks on splitting the atom, or like if you submitted a paper unless it was something that built on the previous work to split the atom and it was splitting it even further, then it just wouldn't, because it'd be ridiculous. But here, and top-tier journals are allowing a 25th paper on a framework of agility. And that's fine if it shows how it's better than the 24. But actually the question isn't there. You just need to show it's valid, I have strong evidence, and it makes a contribution because this is a new framework and this is a different way of looking at things. But the onus of proof isn't there. So, like, the problem with IS as a whole is when we're talking about this, we're basing it on very loose ground. There's an awful lot of immature work, and the big problem is it's not getting respect from industry. So when you look at scientists, when someone comes out with a core paper that's serious in terms of a new framework, it is taken seriously in industry and so on. I'll be honest now, if I see like I did my PhD in agility, it's served me well over the years. But if I get a paper into review now for Aegis, 25th paper on the framework, I actually read the abstract and probably reject it. And I love this stuff, and it's where I did my PhD. I'm not really interested in reading it. It's another one. I'm sure it's valid. I'm sure it's 10 great, I think. I'm sure there's evidence behind all 10, and it's as useless as all the ones that we've heard. So there's a real problem, I think, with that, and I think that it's very hard to have a discussion about this when it's based on such loose grounds.
It does not beg the question then, why write it if the framework that's there form, what's their motivation to writing that thing?
Because the way to get published in a good journal is you have, as Murray said, the practical implications are important. You need to do stuff from that. You have to have shown some. But the judgment for Aegis and those is a 3-star is the theoretical contribution. And now, actually saying, even I said it this morning, saying to Trevor, well, if it's just an application of the 1990 paper, then the theoretical contribution is strong. So actually, the approach most people are taking is, well, if I'm Trevor, we need to just twist this and be a new framework for cloud computing and not refer to the 1991. This is brand new, and then it's great. And it gets traction and it is entertained. And I think it's a self-referencing. The problem with this is, I think IS is probably, I'm not sure if it's more guilty, but certainly as guilty as the rest of the business, is the main readership of these journals, make no mistake, is academics only. And it's a self-reinforcing cycle. Whereas, yeah, to get promoted, when we hire people, we hire 3 or 4 star journal people. And so you need to do that, and to get recognition in the international community. At ISIS, yeah, I need to publish in 3 or 4 star journals. So therefore, that's what we do. And nobody in the community is going to stand up and go, get rid of us, because we're all doing it, and we've played this game. These are the rules of the game, don't change it. But there's and I actually don't think I like the idea of the game. I find it difficult here to think of promotion as a very crude thing. When people say what to do for promotion, it's very vague and ambiguous. In Galway, in Sydney, for example, it was, when I was there for a couple of years, it was very clear, you publish in this list, and that's it. Couldn't care about excuses or your interest in research outside that. So it was a clear game. The problem is, the game within the 3 and 4 star journals is not great. It could be an awful lot stronger. And it's encouraging this framework fetish and method fetish thing, I think.
It's true, you know, and that's key part of the paper is the method fetish as well. Whatever is, you know, exciting at the time, that's what you use, and it'll get there.
Yeah, I think just as a word of caution as well, that book may be true, and we look back in 50 years' time saying, yeah, they were so right.
Yeah.
But you're going to have academics looking at your PhD at your Viva. So you don't have the luxury of saying, well, look, I don't care about you, this is guy's gospel.
But then it's another great example of a big data author. I'm not criticizing that author at all, but across all of these things, all of the books are, you know, with now big data, now this is different, this is serious.
Yeah.
We need proper theories now, or we need different, we need to move away or whatever, but this is different technology that's gone before. Same as cloud, yeah, no, this is serious, this is different. And agility, no, this is different. They're actually all new technologies and emerging technologies. They have different features to them. Again, like when you talk about the theory there about patterns and stuff emerging, you know, CAS theory is all about, in fact, it's the definition of CAS theory is around that, the emergence of stuff that you can't actually plan or mitigate in terms of risk or whatever in advance. But yeah, anyway, sorry.
Okay, so we've about 4 minutes left. So I just want to check in with Trevor to make sure he actually has something concrete to leave. You know, because once we leave the room.
Yes, please, Trevor.
Small theory.
Yeah.
Passive, right? No, just I found it's very helpful. As I said before, a lot of stuff has come out from me onboarding from conferences and stuff, and I think this is a great way to kick off. And I would say thanks to yourself, Dennis, Kira, Marie, everyone else involved.
So I'll add those to the mailing list which I was talking to earlier, and we'll expand that list. If you know other people who are interested and that this event is relevant to, please let them know. If you have any feedback, please come up to myself and Marie. Any ideas, we're open to it. I think also we'll probably continue with the discussion of papers that you sent on that link to, Marie, as a nice thread to term 1, I think. That debate that builds on the absent paper. So there's like 7 other responses to it. So it'll be nice to see what we come up, what we view as our own view compared to what these guys are saying at the end of the 6 weeks. So with that, I just want to say thanks very much. Thanks.